Haley Dandurand. On June 6, 2017, 51-year-old Thelma Boinville was found deceased in her North Shore home, a beloved teacher and mother whose life was cut short during what began as a burglary. Haley Dandurand and her partner Stephen Brown were arrested in a Mililani parking lot shortly after, found in possession of Boinville's truck and personal belongings that linked them to the crime scene. The attack involved multiple weapons, including a hammer, knife, and mallet, creating a brutal crime scene that shocked even veteran investigators. Boinville had been at home when the pair broke in, and the confrontation escalated into fatal consequences. The level of harm inflicted suggested more than a simple burglary gone wrong, indicating sustained contact between the victims and perpetrators. Crime scene analysis revealed that Boinville had fought for her life, with defensive wounds indicating she had tried to protect herself. The medical examiner's report detailed multiple traumatic injuries from different weapons, suggesting a prolonged and violent encounter that went far beyond what would be necessary to simply escape from a surprised homeowner. What drove this deadly break-in? Dandurand and Brown had targeted the home for theft, but when Boinville discovered them inside, the situation turned deadly. Evidence at the scene showed the couple had come prepared with tools that would later be used as weapons. They fled in Boinville's truck, taking her belongings and attempting to stage the scene to delay discovery. Dandurand claimed she was a victim of partner intimidation from Brown, alleging he controlled her through fear and that she hadn't directly participated in the attack. Her defense team sought separate trials to present this narrative, arguing her presence didn't equal active participation. She reportedly passed polygraph tests denying direct involvement, which her attorneys presented as evidence of her truthfulness. But polygraph results were deemed inadmissible in court, and the jury was instead presented with forensic DNA evidence found on the hammer and knife that confirmed her active participation in the assault alongside Stephen Brown. How did investigators build their case? Forensic evidence placed both defendants at the crime scene, with biological materials and fingerprints linking them to multiple locations within the home. DNA analysis confirmed their presence in areas where the confrontation occurred. The stolen truck provided additional evidence, as did witness testimony about their behavior after the incident and attempts to dispose of evidence. Surveillance footage from nearby properties helped establish a timeline of events, showing when Dandurand and Brown arrived at the property and when they fled in Boinville's vehicle. Cell phone records placed both suspects in the area at the time of the incident, contradicting their initial alibis. During interrogation, Dandurand allegedly told police, "Can you just shoot me?" a statement interpreted by prosecutors as guilt rather than remorse. Her defense argued it showed psychological distress from the relationship dynamic and fear of Brown's potential retaliation if she didn't support his version of events. The trial proceeded with extensive evidence presentation, including crime scene photographs, forensic analysis, and testimony from investigators who had processed the scene. The jury heard arguments about whether Dandurand was a willing participant or a coerced accomplice, ultimately siding with the prosecution's version that she had actively participated in both the burglary and the subsequent events. What sentence did she receive? In December 2023, Dandurand was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms with the possibility of parole, plus 20 years extended for the burglary charge. The judge rejected arguments for leniency based on her claimed status as someone being controlled, noting that the evidence showed active participation. The consecutive nature of the sentences means she must serve substantial time on the first before the second even begins, making parole consideration decades away. At sentencing, Boinville's husband Kevin Emery delivered a powerful statement. "They want a second chance. Can I ask for one for my wife?" highlighting the permanent loss his family suffered. His words emphasized that while Dandurand might eventually leave prison, his wife would never return. and their daughter would never have her mother back. Brown received a similar sentence, with both remaining incarcerated at Hawaii facilities. The case drew attention to how burglaries can escalate into far more serious crimes when perpetrators are confronted by residents, and how preparation of weapons suggests intent beyond simple theft. The North Shore community mourned Boinville, remembering her as a dedicated educator who had touched many lives through her teaching. Her death raised awareness about home security and the unpredictable dangers of property crimes. Another case would involve a calculated plot spanning months. Delia Fabro-Miske. In 2016, Delia Fabro-Miske became entangled in a racketeering conspiracy that resulted in the disappearance and presumed ending of 21-year-old Jonathan Fraser. She was the daughter-in-law of Michael Miske, who allegedly ran a criminal enterprise in Hawaii involved in various illegal activities including narcotics trafficking, extortion, and obstruction of justice. Fraser had been involved in a car crash that ended the life of Caleb Miske, Delia's husband and Michael Miske's son. The crash occurred in 2015, and Fraser was acquitted of manslaughter charges in the incident. This acquittal allegedly triggered a revenge plot orchestrated by the Miske organization seeking retaliation for Caleb's death, despite the legal system having found Fraser not criminally responsible. What was Delia's role in the conspiracy? On July 30, 2016, Delia lured Fraser's girlfriend away for a spa day, creating an opportunity for other members of the enterprise to abduct Fraser from his home. While the girlfriend was occupied at the spa, Fraser was taken from his residence and never seen again. His body has never been recovered despite extensive searches of multiple locations, including remote areas on Oahu. Delia participated knowing the plan was to harm Fraser, though prosecutors debated the extent of her knowledge about the ultimate deadly goal. Her actions were crucial to the conspiracy's success, as they removed the one person who might have intervened or witnessed the abduction. The spa appointment was scheduled specifically to ensure she would be away during the critical time window when the abduction occurred. The Miske enterprise operated through intimidation and violence, maintaining control over various criminal activities across Hawaii. Members communicated through coded language and took precautions to avoid law enforcement detection, making the federal investigation particularly complex and time-consuming. How was she caught? Delia was indicted as part of a larger federal investigation into the Miske enterprise, which included racketeering, kidnapping conspiracy, and other serious charges. The investigation spanned years and involved extensive surveillance, wiretaps, and witness interviews. Multiple members of the organization faced charges ranging from racketeering to violent crimes. Federal agents worked for years to penetrate the organization, gathering evidence of the enterprise's structure and criminal activities. The investigation revealed communications between members discussing the abduction and coordinating the cover-up, providing crucial evidence for prosecution. She pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with prosecutors, though she was ultimately not called as a witness during Miske's trial due to strategic decisions by prosecutors. Her cooperation agreement likely influenced her eventual sentencing, as federal guidelines can offer reduced sentences for substantial assistance to the government. What was her sentence? During sentencing arguments in August 2024, disputes arose about the extent of Delia's knowledge. Her defense argued she had been manipulated by the Miske family and didn't fully understand the plan's deadly nature. Prosecutors maintained she knew Fraser would be harmed and chose to participate anyway, making her complicit in the conspiracy. Judge Watson overruled defense objections about her role in the ending, determining that the evidence supported her awareness of the conspiracy's deadly intent. Her statement to the court expressed regret. "I wish I could reverse my decisions. I let fear dictate," suggesting she had been afraid of the Miske organization and its potential retaliation. She was sentenced to 7 years and 3 months in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, and ordered to pay $49,998 in restitution. The restitution likely represents costs associated with the investigation and victim services for Fraser's family, who continue seeking answers about his fate. Fraser's family continues to seek closure without a body to bury, left to wonder about his final moments and what happened to his remains. The case highlighted how organized crime operations can pull in peripheral family members who become complicit in serious offenses, often through pressure or fear. While that plot unfolded over months, another case involved years of planning. Patricia Wong. Patricia Wong was convicted in the 2009 shooting death of 21-year-old Casey Smith on Hawaii's Big Island. Smith was a rodeo champion with a bright future ahead of her, making her loss particularly tragic for the tight-knit rodeo community that had watched her grow up competing at events across the islands. Wong had staged the scene to appear as if Smith had taken her own life, placing the weapon near her body and arranging the scene to support this narrative. However, forensic evidence would eventually contradict this staging and reveal the true nature of what occurred, including inconsistencies in blood spatter patterns and gunshot residue placement that didn't match a self-inflicted scenario. What motivated Wong to commit this act? Smith had recently inherited $250,000 from a family estate, and Wong had established a joint bank account with a survivorship clause specifically designed to transfer funds upon death. This meant that upon Smith's death, Wong would gain access to the full amount automatically without probate or legal challenges. The financial motive was clear and compelling to prosecutors building their case against her. Wong had known Smith and her family for years, making the betrayal particularly painful for those who had trusted her. She had positioned herself as a trusted friend and almost family member while allegedly planning to benefit from Smith's death. The relationship gave her both access and opportunity to carry out her plan without raising immediate suspicion. How did the investigation unfold? Initially, authorities accepted the scene as presented, treating it as a potential self-inflicted incident. But Smith's family questioned the circumstances from the beginning. They knew their daughter's personality and aspirations, and didn't believe she would have taken her own life. Their persistence kept the case from being closed prematurely and prompted deeper investigation. Forensic experts re-examined the scene, noting that the angle of the wound and the position of the body didn't align with typical self-inflicted scenarios. Gunpowder residue patterns suggested the weapon had been fired from a distance inconsistent with someone taking their own life. These technical details became crucial in proving the staging. Wong fled to Las Vegas after the incident, where she remained for 7 years before being extradited back to Hawaii. During this time, investigators continued building their case, gathering evidence and interviewing witnesses who could shed light on Wong's financial situation, her relationship with Smith, and her behavior before and after the death. Witnesses testified during trial that Wong had solicited others to help, seeking people who might be willing to participate in her plan. These conversations, reported by potential accomplices who refused to get involved, provided crucial evidence of premeditation and intent. The testimony showed Wong had been planning the crime for some time, carefully considering how to execute it. What was the trial outcome? The trial was lengthy, with extensive forensic evidence presented over multiple weeks. Ballistics experts testified about the weapon and wound patterns, explaining why the scene appeared staged. Financial records showed the joint account and how Wong stood to benefit immediately. The prosecution built a comprehensive case spanning multiple years of investigation. Wong maintained her innocence throughout, claiming, "I didn't do it. I loved her like my own." But the jury found her guilty after deliberations. Her protests of affection rang hollow against the financial evidence and witness testimony about her attempts to recruit helpers for the plan. In February 2024, Patricia Wong was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole for the second-degree murder of Casey Smith. The Hawaii Paroling Authority later set her minimum term at 40 years during a 2025 hearing. Smith's mother, Emma Chong, addressed the court stating, "My daughter's blood is on her hands," expressing the family's pain after waiting 15 years for justice. The long delay had compounded their grief as they watched years pass while Wong lived freely in Las Vegas. The case demonstrated how patient investigation can eventually bring even carefully staged crimes to light, and how family advocacy can prevent premature case closure. It also highlighted the importance of questioning initial scene assessments when family members raise concerns about inconsistencies. Not all cases involve such calculated planning. Dixie Denise Villa. In 2019, 7-month-old Abigail Labish died while in the care of Dixie Denise Villa at military housing on Oahu. Villa had been running an unlicensed daycare operation from her home, caring for multiple children without proper oversight, credentials, or state approval, putting numerous families at risk. Autopsy results revealed fatal levels of diphenhydramine in the infant's system, the active ingredient in Benadryl. The concentration was consistent with an overdose rather than therapeutic dosing for any legitimate medical purpose. Medical examiners determined this was the direct cause of death, ruling out other potential factors. What led to this tragic outcome? Evidence suggested Villa had administered the medication to sedate the infant, possibly to make caring for multiple children easier and reduce crying or fussiness. This practice, sometimes called chemical restraint, is extremely dangerous in infants whose developing systems cannot safely metabolize such medications, leading to respiratory depression and death. The investigation revealed Villa had been caring for several children simultaneously, creating a chaotic environment where proper attention to individual needs was impossible. Parents who had used her services reported concerns about conditions they witnessed, but felt they had limited childcare options. Villa was operating without a daycare license, meaning she lacked proper training in infant care protocols, medication safety, first aid, CPR, and emergency response procedures. Military families had entrusted their children to her without knowing she was unqualified, unsupervised by regulatory authorities, and operating illegally. How was she held accountable? The investigation began immediately after Abigail's death, with medical examiners conducting a thorough autopsy and comprehensive toxicology screening. The toxicology report provided clear evidence of the overdose, showing levels far exceeding what any reasonable caregiver would administer, leading to criminal charges against Villa. Investigators interviewed other parents whose children had been in Villa's care, uncovering additional concerning practices. Several reported their children had seemed unusually drowsy after spending time at her home, suggesting a pattern of medication misuse rather than an isolated incident. She was tried for manslaughter, with prosecutors presenting medical evidence, expert testimony about proper infant care, and testimony about her unlicensed operation. The jury convicted her after hearing about the dangerous conditions in her care and the preventable nature of Abigail's death. Villa's defense sought probation, arguing she needed to care for her own children and that imprisonment would separate them from their mother. However, the judge rejected this request given the severity of the offense. The breach of trust involved in accepting responsibility for vulnerable infants and the ultimate consequence of her actions. What sentence did she receive? Dixie Denise Villa was sentenced in February 2025 to 20 years in prison for the manslaughter of Abigail Labish. The court emphasized that the toxic levels of diphenhydramine found were consistent with chemical restraint. The judge emphasized that parents must be able to trust caregivers with their children's lives, and that Villa's complete disregard for safety had resulted in a preventable death. The sentence reflected both the loss of life and the violation of that fundamental trust. Abigail's mother, Anna Labish, addressed the court. "The pain of living without Abby is a heavy weight. describing the permanent void in their family and the daily struggle of losing their daughter to someone they had trusted. She expressed hope that the sentence would prevent other families from experiencing similar loss. The case prompted calls for stricter enforcement of daycare licensing requirements, better education for military families about choosing qualified childcare providers, and increased penalties for operating unlicensed childcare facilities. Some cases involve conflict within families rather than breaches of trust. Jessica Heinbaugh. In 2013, Jessica Heinbaugh attacked her pregnant sister, Casey Ann Jones, in what prosecutors described as an act driven by long-standing family grudges and unresolved sibling rivalry. The attack was planned and brutal, shocking the family and community with its severity and the betrayal it represented. Heinbaugh claimed feelings of abandonment and resentment toward her sister, suggesting years of unresolved sibling conflict had built to this violent confrontation. The family dynamics that led to such extreme actions were complex and troubled, with a history of disputes that family members had attempted to mediate without success. What occurred during the attack? Heinbaugh used a dull knife and a bat, attacking Jones in what appeared to be a sustained assault rather than a momentary outburst. The fact that Jones was pregnant made the attack particularly shocking, as it endangered not only her life but also her unborn baby's survival, adding an additional layer of cruelty. The attack occurred in a location where Jones should have felt safe, demonstrating premeditation in choosing when and where to carry out the assault. The use of multiple weapons suggested Heinbaugh had prepared for the confrontation rather than acting impulsively. Her boyfriend assisted in the attack, with both facing charges for the incident. The collaboration suggested planning and intent rather than an impulsive outburst of anger, as both had prepared for the confrontation and coordinated their actions during the assault. How did Jones survive and identify her attackers? Jones testified at trial about the attack, providing first-hand accounts of what occurred. Her testimony was crucial to securing convictions, as she could directly identify both perpetrators and describe their actions and statements during the assault, which helped establish their intent. She survived the assault, and her baby was delivered safely, though both endured trauma from the incident. Medical intervention saved both lives, and Jones's recovery allowed her to participate in the prosecution and see justice served. The psychological scars from being attacked by her own sister would take far longer to heal than the physical wounds. Heinbaugh was arrested shortly after the attack, with evidence linking both her and her boyfriend to the scene. The direct nature of the assault and witness testimony made the case straightforward from a prosecution standpoint, with overwhelming evidence of their involvement. What sentence did she receive? The jury convicted Heinbaugh of attempted ending of life, finding that her actions demonstrated clear intent to end her sister's life. The premeditation and brutality of the attack supported the serious charge and lengthy sentence that would follow. In 2015, she was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. The sentence reflected the gravity of attempting to end a family member's life and the aggravating factor of the victim's pregnancy, which put two lives at risk simultaneously. Jones submitted a victim impact letter stating, "Lasting psychological damage, loss of trust," describing how the attack had permanently altered her sense of safety and family relationships. The betrayal by a sibling created wounds beyond the physical injuries that would take years to heal, if ever. Heinbaugh remains incarcerated, with any parole consideration years away given the severity of her crime. Her boyfriend received a similar sentence for his role in the attack. Not all family incidents involve siblings. Evelyn Itterbeide. On June 22, 2018, Evelyn Itterbeide ended the life of her husband, Juan Itterbeide, a Marine stationed in Hawaii. The incident occurred in their home following a night of drinking and an escalating argument that turned deadly. Juan Itterbeide was found with a fatal stab wound to the chest, resulting in his death at the scene before emergency responders could provide aid. The single wound proved fatal due to its location and depth, penetrating vital organs and causing rapid blood loss that could not be stopped. What led to this domestic tragedy? The couple had been drinking when an argument erupted, with the confrontation escalating from verbal to physical altercation. Neighbors reported hearing loud disputes from the residents in the hours before emergency services arrived, suggesting the argument had been prolonged and intense. Evelyn initially told police she found Juan wounded, claiming she didn't know what had happened to him. However, her story contained inconsistencies that investigators noted during initial questioning, including timeline discrepancies and contradictory statements about her location during the incident. How did her story change? During further interrogation, Evelyn admitted, "I stabbed him," acknowledging her role in her husband's death. The confession came after investigators confronted her with evidence that contradicted her initial account, including forensic findings and witness statements. She claimed self-defense, arguing that she had felt threatened during the argument and feared for her own safety. Her defense team presented this claim during trial, suggesting the confrontation had made her believe deadly force was necessary for her protection. What was the trial outcome? The jury reduced the charge from second-degree ending to manslaughter, finding that while she had caused Juan's death, the circumstances didn't meet the standard for higher charges. This suggested they found some credibility in claims about the argument's intensity and her state of mind. In November 2021, Evelyn was sentenced to the maximum 20 years for manslaughter. The judge emphasized that regardless of the argument, Juan's death was a permanent consequence of her decision to use deadly force, rather than seeking other options like leaving or calling for help. The military community mourned the loss of one of their own, and the case highlighted the dangers when domestic disputes turn physical. Juan's family expressed their grief at losing a son and brother to preventable circumstances. Evelyn is serving her sentence in a Hawaii facility. The case underscored the importance of de-escalation and seeking help before conflicts become deadly. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. Another case also involved tragic circumstances. Valerine Kaleohano Knittel. On August 25, 2009, Valerine Kaleohano Knittel ran a red light while driving under the influence in Hilo, Hawaii. Her vehicle struck another car, causing a crash that ended the life of 17-month-old Aaliyah Braden. Blood alcohol testing revealed Kaleohano Knittel's BAC was 0.249, more than 3 times the legal limit of 0.08. The extreme intoxication level demonstrated severe impairment at the time of the crash, affecting her judgment, reaction time, and ability to control her vehicle. What led to this preventable tragedy? The crash occurred at an intersection when Kaleohano Knittel failed to stop for a red signal. Her impairment prevented her from recognizing or responding to the traffic control, leading to the collision with the vehicle carrying Aaliyah and her family at high speed. The impact caused fatal injuries to the toddler, who died despite emergency medical response. The force of the collision when striking the other vehicle created conditions beyond what emergency responders could address at the scene. How did she respond to the charges? Kaleohano Knittel pleaded guilty to negligent homicide, accepting responsibility for causing Aaliyah's death through her decision to drive while severely impaired. The plea avoided a trial but ensured accountability for her actions. During sentencing, she addressed Aaliyah's family directly. "I'm so sorry. Devastation in your life is in my heart forever," expressing remorse for the permanent loss she had caused through her choices that night. What sentence did she receive? In December 2010, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The judge emphasized that her decision to drive while extremely intoxicated had taken an innocent life and devastated a family, with consequences that would ripple through the community. She was paroled after serving 4 years in 2013, with her release sparking debate about whether the sentence adequately reflected the loss of life. Parole board determinations considered her behavior and rehabilitation efforts during incarceration. Aaliyah's family continues to mourn their daughter, advocating for stricter DUI penalties and better public education about impaired driving dangers. The case illustrated how one person's decision to drive drunk can destroy multiple lives in an instant. Sometimes cases involve patterns rather than single incidents. Sabrina Lynn Fiai. Sabrina Lynn Fiai has a troubling history spanning 25 years, with multiple cases involving serious harm to intimate partners. Her pattern of behavior suggests ongoing mental health and substance issues that have repeatedly led to violent incidents. In 2000, she ended the life of her husband Abe Fiai while he slept. She was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 20 years, but was paroled in 2005 after serving just 5 years of her sentence. What happened after her release? Within months of her 2005 parole, she attacked her boyfriend, reportedly while experiencing drug-induced delusions from methamphetamine use. The attack resulted in another manslaughter conviction, demonstrating she had not successfully addressed her underlying issues during or after incarceration. She was sentenced to another 20 years in 2006 for the second attack. The pattern suggested substance-induced psychosis played a role in her violent behavior, though this didn't excuse the harm caused to her victims. Did the pattern continue? In May 2025, police responded to a stabbing on Kapiolani Boulevard, finding another boyfriend of Fiai's in serious condition with multiple stab wounds. She was arrested at the scene for attempted ending and first-degree assault. The victim survived but required extensive medical treatment, including surgery and prolonged hospitalization. Following the stabbing incident on Kapiolani Boulevard in May 2025, Fiai was convicted and sentenced in late 2025 to a third term of 20 years for attempted murder and first-degree assault. What does this pattern suggest? The repeated nature of Fiai's offenses raises serious questions about the effectiveness of rehabilitation programs and parole decisions. Each release has been followed by another attack on an intimate partner, suggesting interventions have failed to address root causes of her violence. Medical reports indicate a history of psychosis related to methamphetamine use, suggesting mental health treatment combined with substance programs might be necessary. However, the pattern also shows consistent danger to intimate partners who become involved with her. Fiai remains in custody pending trial for the 2025 incident. Her case illustrates how untreated mental health and substance issues can lead to recurring harm despite multiple opportunities for intervention through the justice system. Not all cases involve adult victims. Henrietta H. Stone. In 2016, 9-year-old Shaylin Lejano Stone died from starvation in her grandmother's care in Hilo, Hawaii. The case revealed severe neglect that had gone unnoticed by authorities and community members until it was too late to save the child, exposing failures in oversight systems. Henrietta Stone, the grandmother, had placed an alarm on the refrigerator, preventing Shaylin from accessing food independently. This deliberate barrier, combined with withholding meals, created the conditions that led to the child's death from malnutrition over an extended period. What circumstances led to this neglect? Stone had custody of her granddaughter, though the family dynamics that led to this arrangement remain unclear from public records. The household included other family members who were also charged in connection with the neglect, suggesting a broader pattern of dysfunction and complicity. Shaylin was denied proper medical care in addition to adequate food, compounding the harm from malnutrition. Her deteriorating condition should have triggered intervention from school officials, neighbors, or medical professionals, but no one outside the home appeared aware of her situation or took action to investigate. The refrigerator alarm served as a particularly cruel control mechanism, essentially imprisoning the child in a home with food she could see but not access. This systematic deprivation went beyond simple neglect into deliberate withholding of basic necessities. How was the neglect discovered? Shaylin's death prompted an investigation that revealed the extent of the deprivation she had endured. Medical examiners determined starvation as the cause of death, with her body showing signs of prolonged malnutrition, including organ failure and extreme weight loss, that should have been obvious to anyone who saw her. Multiple family members were charged for their roles in the neglect, though Stone bore primary responsibility as the legal guardian. The investigation examined how such severe neglect could occur without outside detection, raising questions about systemic failures at multiple levels. What was Stone's legal outcome? Stone pleaded no contest to manslaughter charges, avoiding a trial but accepting criminal responsibility for Shaylin's death. The plea came after negotiations between defense and prosecution, with the defense arguing mitigating factors, including Stone's age and health conditions. Henrietta Stone was sentenced in May 2023 to 10 years of probation for the manslaughter of her granddaughter, Shaylin Lahano Stone. By 2025, she had moved into a secondary phase of strictly monitored supervision, given the severity of the neglect and the child's suffering. The judge considered her age, health issues, and lack of prior criminal history in determining probation was appropriate rather than imprisonment, a decision many found inadequate. Prosecutors stated, Shaylin deserved much better, expressing disappointment that the sentence didn't include prison time for causing a child's death through deliberate deprivation. The probation terms include strict conditions and monitoring to prevent similar harm, though critics argued prison would have been more appropriate. The case raised serious questions about how child welfare systems failed to detect and intervene in Shaylin's situation before it reached a fatal conclusion. Her death might have been prevented with proper oversight and community awareness of warning signs. Stone remains on probation in Hawaii, subject to conditions designed to prevent similar harm. The case highlighted failures in the systems meant to protect vulnerable children. Some cases involve multiple family members acting together. Ashley Nihipali and Kuwipo Nihipali. In 2018, Ashley and Kuwipo Nihipali were charged in the death of 6-year-old Mazen Nihipali Monez on Hawaii's Big Island. The case involved sustained harm over time, with evidence of ongoing mistreatment that culminated in the fatal incident. Ashley choked Mazen over a school-related issue, an act that proved fatal. The incident was not isolated, but rather the culmination of a pattern of harsh treatment that other children in the home had witnessed and would later describe to investigators in disturbing detail. What did the investigation reveal? Other children in the household disclosed the ongoing situation to authorities during interviews, providing detailed accounts of what Mazen had endured before his death. Their testimony was crucial to understanding the full scope of what had occurred and establishing the pattern of treatment that preceded the fatal incident. Forensic examination revealed injuries consistent with strangulation and blunt force trauma, establishing the cause of death and documenting the harm. Medical evidence showed patterns suggesting repeated incidents over time rather than a single tragic event, painting a picture of ongoing mistreatment. Ashley had instructed other children to lie about what happened, attempting to conceal her actions by coaching potential witnesses about what to tell authorities. This obstruction of justice demonstrated consciousness of guilt and an attempt to evade accountability for her actions. How were both women prosecuted? Ashley faced charges for manslaughter and harm to a family member, with evidence showing she had directly caused Mazen's death through her actions. Her attorney cited a troubled upbringing and difficult circumstances as context for her behavior, though this didn't excuse her actions toward a vulnerable child in her care. Kuwipo faced charges for her role in the months preceding Mazen's death, including harm and hindering prosecution. Evidence showed she had participated in mistreating Mazen and later tried to cover up what occurred by providing false information to investigators. Kuipo accepted a plea deal to testify against Ashley, providing information about the household dynamics and events leading to Mazen's death. Her cooperation influenced her eventual sentence, though it sparked debate about whether the plea agreement was too lenient given her participation. What sentences did they receive? In December 2020, Ashley was sentenced to 20 years for manslaughter plus additional terms for related charges, totaling 25 years. The judge emphasized that Mazen had been in her care and she had failed in the most fundamental duty to protect a child placed in her custody. Kuipo received 5 years probation in February 2021 under her plea agreement. The dramatic difference in sentences reflected her cooperation and lesser direct role in the fatal incident, though many questioned whether probation adequately addressed her participation in the ongoing mistreatment. Ashley remains incarcerated serving her 25-year sentence. Kuipo completed her probation and is no longer under supervision. The case highlighted failures in informal custody arrangements where children live with relatives without proper oversight from child welfare agencies. Mazen's death prompted calls for better monitoring of children in non-traditional custody situations and clearer reporting requirements for suspected harm. The final case involves charges still pending resolution. Sina Pili, accused. In 2023, Sina Pili was charged with manslaughter in the death of 11-year-old Adsailaya Pili Ayu in Laie, Hawaii. The girl had been in Pili's care for only 2 months following adoption when she died, raising immediate suspicions about what occurred during that brief period. Pili worked as a social worker, a position that should have equipped her with knowledge of proper care and child welfare standards. This background makes the allegations particularly disturbing, as someone trained to protect children stands accused of causing a child's death through reckless conduct. What led to Azailaya's death? The circumstances surrounding the death remain under investigation, with authorities examining the 2-month period between adoption and death. The rapid timeline between placement and fatal outcome immediately raised red flags for investigators about conditions in the home and what transpired during those weeks. Prosecutors allege Pili recklessly caused Azailaya's death through actions or omissions during her care. The specific allegations remain sealed pending trial, but the manslaughter charge suggests prosecutors believe there was gross negligence or reckless conduct rather than accidental death from unforeseeable circumstances. How did authorities respond? Pili was arrested and charged in November 2023, shortly after Azailaya's death prompted investigation. The swift charging decision suggests evidence immediately available to investigators supported criminal prosecution, rather than treating it as a tragic accident requiring no legal accountability. The case raised serious questions about adoption oversight and vetting procedures for prospective adoptive parents. How someone with Pili's professional background could be charged with such an offense prompted examination of what warning signs might have been missed during the adoption process and whether additional safeguards are needed. What is the current status? As of January 2026, Sina Pili remains in custody awaiting her manslaughter trial, which is currently scheduled for spring 2026. The defense is expected to challenge the prosecution's theory regarding the cause of death for Azailaya Pili Ayu. The defense is expected to challenge the prosecution's theory about how Azailaya died and whether criminal charges are appropriate given the circumstances. The trial will determine whether Pili's actions or omissions rose to the level of criminal recklessness that warrants conviction. Medical evidence, expert testimony about proper care standards, and forensic analysis will likely play crucial roles in establishing what occurred during those 2 months and whether it constituted criminal conduct. The case has prompted discussions about post-adoption monitoring and support systems for newly formed families. Whether additional oversight might have prevented Azailaya's death remains a question that will be examined as the legal process continues and advocates push for policy changes. Pili's social work background adds complexity to the case, as jurors will need to consider whether someone trained in child welfare standards should be held to different expectations than an average caregiver when evaluating recklessness claims. The outcome of this pending trial will have implications for adoption policies and oversight in Hawaii, potentially leading to reforms in how adoptive placements are monitored during critical early months. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.